excellent presentation. And I would just remind you that in respect to our meetings, we know that there's many important discussions that you want to have with various people. We'd ask that you just have the discussions off the floor during our presentations. I'd like now to ask the Honorable Emigdio Tanjuatco, the Vice Chairperson of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, to make his presentation.
The honorable colleagues, esteemed fellow parliamentarians from across the globe, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great honor and privilege that I stand before you today to discuss the critical and complex issue of the South China Sea. I am truly grateful for the opportunity to share my insights and engage in meaningful dialogue on a topic of vital importance for our region and the rest of the world. Firstly, it is fitting that the Parliamentary Intelligence Security Forum is being held here in Manila, given the critical importance of the security issues affecting our region. We extend our sincere gratitude to the Honorable Robert Pittenger and the Forum's Steering Committee for collaborating with us at the House of Representatives of the Philippines to make this event possible. Notably, as I understand, this marks the first time the forum is being hosted in Asia, highlighting the region's growing relevance in global security discussions. Next slide, please. The South China Sea is critically important due to its strategic, economic, environmental, and geopolitical significance. It is one of the busiest maritime routes in the world, with approximately 30% of global trade, valued at over $3 trillion annually, passing through its waters. This vital maritime corridor linking the Pacific and Indian Oceans connects key economies in Asia and beyond, making it indispensable to international commerce and global supply chains. It is likewise home to diverse ecosystems, including coral reefs, mangroves, contributing to global ecological balance. It also contributes to food security, as it is a major fishing ground contributing to 12% of the global fish catch and providing livelihood for millions in coastal communities. Moreover, undersea explorations revealed sizable amounts of natural gas and crude oil beneath its seabed. It is estimated that there are around 11 billion barrels of oil and nearly 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas reserves underneath the South China Sea, making it a potentially crucial source of energy security. All these factors underscore the immense strategic importance of the South China Sea, making it a focal point in the broader competition between the world's leading superpowers, China and the United States, who have conflicting interests in the region. China seeks to assert its dominance in the South China Sea, driven not only by the region's resource wealth, but also by its desire to establish a sphere of influence over a key area in the Indo-Pacific. This would further solidify China's strategic position and expand its power in the region. On the other hand, the United States is committed to preserving a rules-based international order and ensuring freedom of navigation, which are critical to maintaining the flow of global trade and safeguarding international security. It is important to emphasize that the geopolitical significance of the South China Sea extends beyond just China and the US. Other global powers such as Japan, Australia, and the European Union have also raised concerns over the potential for conflict and instability in the region. Next slide, please. Before we delve into the global implications of the South China Sea, it is essential to understand the ongoing territorial disputes in the region and the nations involved. By examining the competing interests and overlapping assertions of sovereignty, we can better appreciate the complexities of the situation and the stakes for both the region and the international community. Key actors in the territorial disputes include the Philippines, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, the People's Republic of China, and Taiwan. The disputes involve the islands, reefs, banks, and other features of the region, including the Spratly Islands, Paracel Islands, Scarborough Shoal, and the overlapping of these nations' exclusive economic zones. Vietnam claims the whole of the Paracel and Spratly Islands. China has de facto control over the Paracel Islands, while Vietnam occupies a good number of features in the Spratlys. Malaysia's territorial claim is limited to a few high tide features off the coast of Borneo. It occupies Swallow Reef in the Spratlys. Meanwhile, Brunei's territorial claim is solely to Luisa Reef off the coast of Brunei. On the other hand, Indonesia is not a direct claimant to any of the disputed features in the South China Sea. However, its exclusive economic zone in the Natuna Sea overlaps with China's expansive 9-dash-line claim. The Philippines' territorial claim to the South China Sea is confined to what is known as the West Philippine Sea, or simply the WPS. The WPS, as defined under Republic Act No. 12064, otherwise known as the Philippine Maritime Zones Act, refers to the maritime zones on the western side of the Philippine archipelago, including the Luzon Sea and the territorial seas of the Bajo de Masinloc, also known as the Scarborough Shoal, and maritime features of the Kalayaan Island Group. The Kalayaan Island Group, or KIG, does not equate to the whole of Spratlys. Instead, it refers to a cluster of features under the municipality of Kalayaan, province of Palawan, as declared in Presidential Decree 1596 and clarified in RA 9522, or the Baselines Law of the Philippines. There is a thriving community of Filipino fisherfolk living in the KIG, including its main island, Pag-asa, aptly named after the Filipino word for hope. We have had the privilege of visiting Pag-asa Island firsthand, allowing us to witness the daily lives and experiences of our fellow Filipinos who call this remote yet significant territory their home. In contrast, China, and essentially Taiwan, practically claims almost the entire South China Sea through its 9-dash-line, putting them directly at odds with the other claimants in the region, including, of course, the Philippines. Famously, the 2012 Scarborough Shoal standoff between the Philippines and China resulted in our government instituting arbitral proceedings against China under Annex 7 of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, the following year. On July 12, 2016, the arbitral tribunal adjudicating the Philippines' case against China in the South China Sea ruled overwhelmingly in favor of the Philippines, determining that major elements of China's claim, including its 9-dash-line, recent land reclamation activities, and other activities in Philippine waters, were unlawful. Unsurprisingly, China, which did not participate in the proceedings, rejected and continues to reject the arbitral award, even though it is binding under international law. Next slide, please. These disputes, stemming from the conflicting claims of various parties and their efforts to safeguard their territories, have led to the establishment of military outposts in the area. However, China's increased presence in the South China Sea and the massive buildup of military infrastructure on reclaimed land, including naval bases and airstrips, on the features they control in both the Paracel and Spratly Islands, greatly contributed to the militarization of the region. Chinese artificial islands constructed on top of 7 key Spratly features, such as the Fiery Cross Reef, Subi Reef, and Mischief Reef, which are now equipped with military-grade infrastructure, including long airstrips capable of handling military aircraft, radar systems, surface-to-air missiles, and communication arrays. Taiwan controls Ituaba, the largest naturally occurring feature in the Spratlys, which it has fortified with military installations, including a runway, harbor, and radar systems. Vietnam has a significant military presence in the Paracels and Spratlys. Vietnam likewise occupies the most features in the Spratlys, such as Spratly Island, Pearson Reef, and Southwest Cay, where it has established military outposts, building bunkers, radar stations, and other military infrastructure. Malaysia occupies several features in the southern Spratlys, such as Swallow Reef and Mariveles Reef, where it has constructed military outposts and airstrips. Finally, the Philippines has maintained a military presence on Pag-asa Island, the largest of the Philippine-controlled islands in the Spratlys. This island served as the main base for Filipino troops stationed in the area, and the Philippine government has made efforts to improve its infrastructure, including a small airstrip and port facilities. The Philippines has also stationed troops on Ayungin Shoal, where the BRP Sierra Madre, a grounded Philippine Navy ship, serves as a military outpost. Unfortunately, the militarization of South China Sea features significantly raises the potential for military confrontation, especially given the competing interests in the area. The presence of airstrips, missile systems, and other military infrastructure on disputed islands has transformed these features from simple outposts to fortified positions that could serve as launch points for military operations. Moreover, the strategic significance of these islands, coupled with their proximity to critical maritime trade routes and potential undersea resources like oil and natural gas, makes the South China Sea a highly contested and militarized region. This growing militarization further complicates efforts towards diplomatic resolution and increases the risk of accidents or skirmishes that could escalate into larger conflicts. Next slide, please. That brings us to the next point of concern, China's increasing aggression and assertiveness, as evidenced by its increasingly bold moves to illegally encroach on the territories of other parties involved. China has increasingly employed gray zone tactics, primarily utilizing its Coast Guard, the CCG, to project authority throughout the South China Sea. In addition, China has used maritime militia vessels to create the impression of legitimate fishing activities, particularly within the exclusive economic zones of other countries. For instance, the CCG's massive ships, including the infamous Monster ship, have been observed navigating the Philippine EEZ off the coast of Zambales, blatantly violating Philippine sovereignty and raising concerns over freedom of navigation in the area. These actions are part of China's broader strategy to assert control over disputed waters in the South China Sea, frequently interfering with the Philippines' fishing and resource exploration activities within its own EEZ. In response, the Philippines has deployed its Coast Guard, the PCG, to challenge and shadow the Monster ship and other Chinese vessels to protect its maritime rights. Furthermore, Chinese aggression towards Philippine resupply missions in Ayungin and Escoda Shoals have become a significant point of contention. Chinese vessels, including the CCG and maritime militia, have repeatedly harassed and blocked Philippine ships attempting to deliver supplies to the Filipino troops stationed in the BRP Sierra Madre. Similar incidents have occurred at Escoda Shoal, where Chinese forces have interfered with Philippine operations despite these areas being well within the Philippine exclusive economic zone. These actions are just a few examples of Chinese aggression directed at the Philippines. China has also come into conflict with other claimants in the South China Sea, especially Vietnam, further complicating the regional security environment. Next slide, please. I firmly believe that any discussion about the South China Sea would be incomplete without addressing China's overarching goal of bringing Taiwan under its control. This objective is intricately linked to the broader dynamics of power and influence in the region, as Taiwan's strategic location and geopolitical significance are key factors shaping China's ambitions in the South China Sea and beyond. A Chinese reunification effort, especially one involving military action, would escalate tensions across the Indo-Pacific and embolden China to take even more assertive actions in the South China Sea, further intensifying disputes with claimant states such as the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Control over Taiwan, including assets like Ito Aba, would allow China to strengthen its military presence in the region, deploying additional naval forces, missile systems, and aircraft, which could destabilize the area. This would also enable China to tighten control over critical maritime trade routes, threatening freedom of navigation and potentially resulting to severe economic consequences, deterring investment, disrupting trade, and escalating resource exploitation, which would also cause environmental degradation. The US and its allies, such as Japan and Australia, would likely respond by increasing their military presence in the region, further polarizing the South China Sea. Smaller claimant states would face heightened pressure as China redirects its resources to assert territorial claims using coercive tactics such as blockades and resource restrictions. The Philippines could play a crucial role in the event of a military excursion by China against Taiwan due to its strategic location and long-standing alliance with the United States. With its northmost islands only about 200 kilometers away from the southern tip of Taiwan and at the heart of the Indo-Pacific region, the Philippines offers vital geographic proximity for monitoring and responding to developments in the Taiwan Strait. Nevertheless, we must fervently hope that a military conflict between China and Taiwan never comes to pass. Diplomatic solutions and peaceful dialogue must remain the priority to ensure that tensions are resolved without resorting to violence. Next slide, please. Resolving the territorial disputes in the South China Sea requires a combination of diplomatic, legal, and cooperative measures that prioritize peace, stability, and upholding international law in the context of China's attempts to assert dominance over the region. This approach requires collaboration among all claimant states and stakeholders to build trust and prevent conflict. Key elements would include adherence to international law. Solutions should align with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and leverage the 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling that invalidated China's 9-line claim. Second, bilateral and multilateral dialogue. Bilateral talks can address specific disputes, while multilateral platforms like ASEAN and the ongoing Code of Conduct negotiations provide opportunities for inclusive discussions and collective agreements. Confidence-building measures. Establishing communication hotlines and engaging in cooperative humanitarian missions can reduce tensions and foster trust. Joint development of resources. Claimants can pursue resource-sharing agreements for fisheries, oil, natural gas in the disputed areas, fostering cooperation without compromising sovereignty claims. environmental cooperation, protecting the biodiversity of the South China Sea through joint efforts to address overfishing, coral reef restoration, and marine pollution offers a shared platform for collaboration. Engagement with international partners. Non-claimant states such as the US, Japan, and Australia should support a rules-based order, promote dialogue, and reinforce adherence to international law without escalating tensions. Conflict avoidance agreements. Claimant states should commit to non-aggression pacts, demilitarize disputed areas, and resolve conflicts through peaceful negotiations. And lastly, regional integration. Strengthening economic and security ties through ASEAN-led frameworks or initiatives like RCEP can reduce unilateral actions and encourage cooperation. Ultimately, resolving these disputes will require sustained diplomatic effort, collective action among regional states, and unwavering adherence to international law to counter unilateral actions and ensure long-term peace in the region. Next slide. The Philippines remains steadfast in defending its sovereign territory and sovereign rights in the South China Sea. The Philippines continues to engage with China through the bilateral consultative mechanism to address disputes and promote dialogue. Simultaneously, it seeks to strengthen cooperation with other claimant states, international stakeholders, and allies, emphasizing the importance of upholding a rules-based international order and ensuring peace and stability in the region. For its part, the Philippine Congress plays a pivotal role in protecting the nation's maritime entitlements and safeguarding its sovereignty. This commitment is evident in the enactment of key legislation, such as the Maritime Zones Act and the Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act, which define and reinforce the Philippines' maritime rights in accordance with international law. As a member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs chaired by the Honorable Maria Rachel Arenas, I have had the privilege of working closely with our esteemed colleagues in the House and at the Senate to ensure the successful passage of these landmark measures. Furthermore, the House of Representatives has taken a firm and resolute stance against China's illegal actions in the West Philippine Sea by adopting House Resolution number 187, which condemns Beijing's unlawful activities and calls on the Philippine government to assert and protect the nation's sovereign rights over its exclusive economic zone and continental shelf. It underscores the importance of adherence to the principles of UNCLOS and highlights the 2016 ruling of the Permanent Court of Arbitration, which invalidated China's sweeping 9-dash claim. This significant initiative was spearheaded by the Special Committee on the West Philippine Sea under the leadership of Chairperson Neptali Gonzalez II. The committee has been proactively and diligently coordinating with the National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea and the newly established National Maritime Council, ensuring that we remain well-informed and responsive to developments in the region. Through these collaborative efforts, the committee plays a crucial role in shaping policies and strategies to uphold Philippine sovereign rights and national interests in the West Philippine Sea. More importantly, under the leadership of Speaker Ferdinand Martin Romualdez, the House of Representatives has also prioritized providing robust support to frontline agencies defending our territorial waters. This is reflected by the significant budgetary increases allocated to the Philippine Navy and the Philippine Coast Guard, equipping them to better protect the country's maritime zones and uphold our sovereign rights. Through these legislative and budgetary actions, the House of Representatives reaffirms its steadfast commitment to defending the Philippines' territorial integrity, advancing a rules-based international order, and ensuring the sustainable use of the country's maritime resources. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation on the state of play in the South China Sea. Let us all recognize the importance of this region, not just for the claimants, but for the global community. The South China Sea is essential for international trade, marine resources, and ecological balance. Its significance goes beyond borders, making it crucial for all parties to collaborate for peace, stability, and cooperation. The ongoing territorial disputes reminds us that peace is fragile and must be actively protected. While the challenges are complex, they can be resolved through adherence to international law, multilateral cooperation, and open dialogue. By working together, we can ensure that resources are shared fairly and the rules-based order is maintained. The Philippines remains committed to defending its sovereign rights and promoting peaceful solutions, engaging with all parties through bilateral and multilateral channels. Our goal is to make the South China Sea a region of peace and cooperation. In closing, I urge all leaders, policymakers, and stakeholders to work together toward conflict resolution and shared prosperity. Let us focus on common interests and sustainable development for future generations. Again, thank you, and may our collective efforts lead to a stable and prosperous South China Sea and beyond. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay.
Thank you, Honorable Tanjuatco. And we could ask General Enrico, please, for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A bit low, though.
Thank you very much, Honorable Peter Pittenger, Honorable Emigdio Tanjuatco III, Vice Chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs. Good afternoon. Partners in governance, Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the National Security Advisor, Secretary Eduardo M. Año, let me present to you the state of play in the South China Sea as far as national security is concerned. First, the geopolitical tension in South China Sea. The SES continues to be at a flashpoint for geopolitical tensions due to the overlapping territorial claims by China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan. The SES is a vital hub for global trade, energy resources, and strategic control, drawing the attention of external powers like the United States, which conducts freedom of navigation operations. Since 2009, China has been increasing their efforts to consolidate its position in the South China Sea through its expansive claim using their military, Coast Guard, and maritime militia to harass foreign vessels exploring and extracting resources in the SCS. Now in the Philippines position. On 12 January 2013, the Republic of the Philippines instituted arbitral proceedings against the People's Republic of China under Annex 7 to the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. On 12 July 2016, the arbitral tribunal tasked to adjudicate the case ruled overwhelmingly in favor of the Philippines, determining the major elements of the Chinese claims, including the 9-dash line, reclamation activities, and other activities were illegal and unlawful. Since 2012, the UNCLOS and the arbitral award have been the twin cornerstones of policies and action of the Philippine government in the WPS and SCS. Despite having won the arbitration, China continues to refuse to recognize and abide by the ruling, undermining the salient international law and the rules-based international order. From gray zone to ICAD. The term gray zones describe a set of activities that occur between peace and war and often entail calibrated exercise that does not necessarily breach escalating thresholds while achieving certain coercive effects because of its very nature. the Philippines has had difficulty countering gray zone activities. Hence, the Philippines decided to rename the gray zone activities to what they really are, which is ICAD, meaning illegal, coercive, aggressive, and deceptive action in the area. Despite all this in place for international order, China is still conducting ICAD activities in the area, designed to sway but not really overthrow existing international order. China's ICAD activities allow Beijing to bypass international law and consequently undermine the rules-based international order. As shown, here are some of the examples of Chinese Coast Guard ships firing water cannon at the Philippine Coast Guard and BFAR vessels. Specifically on the right, Beijing deployment of long-range acoustic device is among its gray zone tactics in the SCS, which happened on 04 December 2024. Last November 29, the Philippine Navy confirmed that dozens of Chinese military, Coast Guard, and maritime militia vessels continue to swarm and stay in Subi Reef near Pag-asa Island in the West Philippine Sea. The Subi Reef is occupied by China and has turned the same into a fully operational naval base through reclamation and provisions of satellite communication equipment and other military wherewithal. The Chinese Coast Guard's coercive, aggressive, and barbaric actions during the humanitarian rotation and resupply mission at BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal on June 17, 2024, resulted in severe damage to personnel and vessels of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, including their communication and navigation equipment. At the left part, in early October 2024, Chinese Coast Guard vessels tailed and harassed Filipino fishermen trying to fish in the waters near Sabina Shoal or Escoda. At the right part, in late November 2024, the Chinese People's Liberation Army helicopter harassed Filipino fishermen in Rasul or Iroquois Rift in the West Philippine Sea. The Chinese Coast Guard seems to never run out of ICAD activities in the WPS, such as issuing radio challenges and unauthorized marine scientific research, among others. In February 2023, they also aimed a military-grade laser at the Philippine Coast Guard vessel, temporarily blinding its crew and posing a serious threat to navigational safety. Additionally, the Chinese military and Coast Guard have launched dangerous flares at Philippine aircraft and vessels operating within the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone, further escalating tension and demonstrating aggressive intimidation tactics. In 2022, U.S. Indo-PACOM Commander Admiral John C. Aquilino reported that China has militarized at least 3 artificial islands it built in South China Sea. China reclaimed a total of close to 3,000 acres on 7 coral reefs it occupied in the Spratlys Islands in the southern part of China. China's island building activities have negatively impacted fisheries in the immediate area on the reclamation sites, and as the 2016 award also affirmed, have caused the destruction of the coral and marine ecosystem in the South China Sea. Another example of ICAD activity, a Chinese Coast Guard ship that blocked the Philippine Coast Guard vessel during a resupply mission in BRP Sierra Madre in Second Thomas Shoal. The picture on the right shows President Marcos Jr. shaking hands and recognizing the bravery of a soldier named Seaman First Class Jeffrey Pacundo, who lost his right thumb during a maritime clash with Chinese Coast Guard near Ayungin Shoal last June 17, 2024. Part of the ICAT activities and one of the biggest issues that the Philippines government is facing is Chinese cyber operations and misinformation, disinformation campaigns relative to the South China Sea territorial claims. Just recently, a Chinese national and 2 accomplices were arrested for allegedly conducting espionage activities. According to the National Bureau of Investigation Cybercrime Division, the suspects were scanning critical infrastructure that could threaten national security. It was also reported the Chinese national is a graduate controlled and operated by the People's Liberation Army. According to Assistant General Jonathan Malaya in a recent forum, there will be more arrests in the next few days in coordination with the AFP and the NBI. Now, let me share with you the efforts of the Philippine government addressed to the security concerns in the WPS and SCS in terms of its strengthening the organization, diplomatic, political, military, information campaigns, and legislative measures. Last year, the President signed Executive Order Number 57, which renamed and reorganized the National Coast Watch Council to the National Maritime Council to formulate policies and strategies to ensure a unified, coordinated, and effective governance framework for the country's maritime security and domain awareness, among other functions. Under the organizational umbrella of the National Maritime Council is the National Task Force for West Philippine Sea, chaired by the National Security Advisor. The mandate of the National Task Force for West Philippine Sea is to orchestrate, synchronize, and to operationalize the employment of capabilities of different agencies for a unified action relative to the WPS. On the strategic front, and as earlier stated, the UNCLOS and the 2016 Arbitral Award are the twin anchors of the Philippine policy and action at the SCS and WPS. The Philippines is likewise undertaking an aggressive stand for international support, not only by pursuing closer ties with allies and strategic partners, but also to a broader recalibration of its foreign policy. As an example, the Philippines, the United States, and Japan vowed to continue working together to enhance and deepen trilateral ties, particularly in the areas of economic, maritime, and technology cooperation. Further, the Philippine government advances diplomatic tools for a peace settlement of disputes, such as keeping communication lines open with China, filing diplomatic protest, issuance of note verbals and demarches, among others. As shown, growing number of countries have issued statements of support to the Philippines following the 2016 arbitral ruling and in line with the UNCLOS. Lastly, the Philippines successfully completed the 5th rotation and reprovision RORE mission in BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal in line with the Philippine-China understanding to prevent miscalculation in the area. The AFP viewed the mission as substantial demonstration in diplomatic and pragmatic cooperation in dealing with the issues in the SCS. Beyond the diplomatic response, the AFP and participating forces from other countries held casualty response simulation and heavy weapons training, conducting its 8th iteration, Kamandak 2024, integrated emerging doctrines for coastal defense and counter-landing operations, and other mill-to-mill activities, including unilateral training and the Balikatan exercise. One of the priorities of the government is transparency initiative, to publicize the aggressive action of China and get the support of the Filipinos and the international community. Just recently, the Philippine Coast Guard launched a comic book to raise awareness, especially in the rural areas, titled The Stories of Teacher June. Also, aside from WPS Provincial Caravan, the National Security Council, together with the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, held Fisher Folks Congress in local community to discuss sustainable fishing practices and strengthen partnership for peace and security in the WPS. On 08 November 2024, the President signed into law 2 measures to reinforce the Philippines' entitlement and responsibility within the maritime zone. The Philippine Maritime Zones Act declares the Philippine Maritime Zones in accordance with the standards set by the UNCLOS, which provide a clear and robust legal framework to protect and manage marine resources and entitlements, ensuring their sustainable use for the benefit of the Filipino people. The Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act establishes a system of archipelagic sea lanes and air routes through which foreign vessels and aircraft shall exercise archipelagic sea lanes passage. The designated ASL routes aim to facilitate safe passage for foreign ships and aircraft without compromising national security nor diminishing Philippine capacity to regulate such passage and exercise good environmental stewardship. During the New Year's call of the National Security Council last month, the National Security Advisor, Secretary Eduardo M. Año, called the year 2024 as the year of policy milestone, citing the National Security Policy 2023 to 2028 and the National Security Strategy 2024, both approved by the President, particularly to address issues in the WPS and SCS. The NSP identifies the national sovereignty and territorial integrity as one of the national security interests, subsequently making defense, military, maritime, air, land, space, and border security part of its 15-point national agenda. Moreover, the national security strategy is seen to enhance the country's ability to tackle complex security challenges both locally and globally, and is aligned with the provisions of the national security policy, which prioritizes 4 key areas. 1. Human capital development. 2. Institution building. 3. Efficient use of national power through diplomacy and defense. And 4. Fostering sustainable economic growth through resilience and legislative support. Finally, as a beloved citizen of the Republic of the Philippines, I believe that there is one thing that came out positively amidst the adversity in the WPS. It is a collective aspiration, patriotism, and unity of the Filipinos in protecting the national sovereignty and territorial integrity against any foreign power. This challenging time has made Filipinos resilient, resourceful, and stronger as a nation. That ends my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas.
Thank you.